Thank you so much for tuning in. I am April Evans, and this is our pastor, Pastor Wendell Jones of CYM.
You see how Tina did that?
What'd she do?
She didn't give us no cue time.
She told me go. Hey, that's because I know her. And,
Okay.
hey,
That's good. Sisterhood. Sister pie stick by each other. Go ahead.
Absolutely. This is our pastor. I mean, we don't have a take two or take three. That we just kind of
It's
roll
live.
with it. Yeah, that we are all the way live. But we appreciate you guys tuning in with us as you normally do every single Sunday. Thank you so much. If you can, take a moment to hit the like button so that we know that you're there. Say hello, type something to us, but also go ahead and begin to share this to your timeline. Today's message was really good. I know I said it every single Sunday, but I promise you, it really is. I don't be faking. It really is good. And I'll tell you why it's so good. It's because it's practical. But not only is it because it's practical, but it works. It works. I would not be sitting in this seat if the biblical principles weren't clear enough for me to be able to apply them and see them work in my life. But you have to apply it to see it work. That's the key.
Amen.
Pastor Jones.
Yes, ma'am.
Last Sunday, you thought you were going to do something different this Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And you said, what was the title going to be that you were going to talk about today?
Oh,
Big dreams?
big blessing, big bullseye.
Yeah, big blessings, but big bullseye. So maybe we'll get that next Sunday.
Maybe.
Maybe. Who knows what God's going to do.
Exactly.
But today, we talked about after the loss.
Yeah.
After the loss. And you came from where? 2 Samuel?
2 Samuel 12, verses 19 and 20.
All right, go ahead and set it up for the good people.
That's right. When in the middle of David and Bathsheba's situation, and David has just received word from his servants that his son has died. And the Bible says that then David, he gets up, he washes himself, he anoints himself, he puts on some new clothes, and then he goes to worship.
Okay.
You need more setup than that?
Well, yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, okay, so that's perfectly fine. You don't have to give us more setup. But the way you kind of launched out this morning, I mean, but that's what I do. I'm gonna cue you right on up. Okay, so let's talk about David. You said that the king, he's teaching us something in this
Yeah.
particular in this particular text. You know, because of after all the crying and the pleading that he did
Yeah.
for God to save his child's life, what happened?
God said no, you know, and we have to learn, and God is so gracious with us that he gives us information on how to do this, but we have to learn how to resume our lives, even able how to go to another level in our lives after we've suffered a loss, and losses of any type. And so David pleaded with God. He stepped away from being the king for a minute and really was just being a daddy. And but after God said no, he had to get back to his calling. And so he lays out for us what we have to do. And it's so practical because it never states to us that his heart wasn't still broken,
Right.
that he wasn't still suffering. But God still tells us how to do what we need to do while our emotions are healing.
Wow, so we have a couple of people who know a little bit about God saying no who just tuned in. We have Darren Carson, who just tuned in, my best friend.
DC.
Yeah, we got Evella Kirkwood. We also have Dr. Shahara, who's also tuned in as well.
Okay.
So, but David was the king.
Absolutely.
But you're telling me that David, who was the king, and he has this title, but you're telling me that he's out here in the open,
Absolutely.
and he's crying and pleading out to God, and has on, sackcloth and covered in ashes, and you're telling me that his title didn't prevent him from doing this?
No, as a matter of fact, being the king, I meant to say this to you all, but I forgot to say this to you. I said, being the king, David could have had somebody go pray for him. He could have had somebody go mourn for him. He literally could have had a mourner for him.
Wow.
But sometimes life hits you in a way that you realize can't nobody pray for us like me. And it doesn't matter who I am, doesn't matter my title, especially in the case of David, when it comes to your child, and when you have children, or just really anybody that you really love, all that other stuff that you work so hard to obtain and achieve becomes very irrelevant. And so you see the king not caring. The king's out on his face because he is desperately being a daddy. He's desperately trying to seek God for God's intervention. And that's what we do with our faith and our prayer. We ask God for things, and we really don't know the outcome of it. But in this particular case, David asked God, he's really asking God to change his mind.
Right.
And God said no. God said no.
Well, there's been plenty of times that we all have prayed to God and we've asked God specifically to do something, to be something, to move on our behalf in a certain way. And there's been times where I've been disappointed with God. I've been upset with God. I've been mad. I've been hurt that I didn't get the response that I expected to get, or that I believe my faith should have gotten me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, God, I've served you this long, or God, I've seen you do this for somebody else. I'm surely you can do it for me, and it didn't happen.
Right.
So, in David's particular case, and what you brought out today was that David did 4 things that helped him through this time. And one of the things that you said that David, the first thing that he did was he arose from the ground.
Yeah.
What does that even mean for us?
The king was living on his faith on his face with his faith. He was down there petitioning God because he believed in God, that God can do some wonderful things. David had a life that had a rich history of God intervening and doing some incredible things for him. And so he took that same faith that he developed and he lay prostrate before the Lord. But this time that faith did not prevail in the direction, as you said, April, as he really wanted to. Because that's what we do. We'll seek God for his help, but we also hand him the script and say, help me, but help me like this.
Correct.
And that's what David was saying. Help me like this. I need my child to be okay.
Right.
And I get that because even as a parent, if we're really honest, sometimes we watch our children suffer at the hands of things that we should have killed. And that child of David was the sacrifice for David's sin. And so that will make you forget your title when you see something that some issues, some whatever that you should have prevented, should have dealt with within yourself, and now you watch it being attaching itself to your child. You'll go in your face for that. Even if you don't even really know God, go to church, you'll find God for your child. You absolutely will. And so that's what we see the king doing. And so that same faith that drove him to his knees, same faith that drives you to your knees, David then uses that same faith to get up. That's the first step to recovery. Sometimes when we get hit with a blow and God tells us no, when God tells us no, we really get to test to see what our faith is made of. And instead of throwing his faith away like so often we do when we don't get the response from God that we want, David now has to turn and apply it differently. You have to apply your faith differently. This is my faith. I've worked to develop this. I don't just have faith for healing, faith for deliverance, faith for success, faith, whatever. I have faith, period. And I take that faith, that trust in God, and I apply it to whatever specific thing in my life I needed to work on. And so when it didn't work over here, or God said no to my use of it, I can't throw my faith away. I still need it. And so David now takes that same faith and applies it with just his getting up. Some of y'all watching this know that. It's so easy to go from a position of prayer to a position of depression. You're already down.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that far to travel all the rest of the way to the floor. And so when God gives you a resounding no, when you lose a loved one, lose a job, lose a business, lose whatever, something that you committed your life to, that thing can be devastating. And so now instead of discarding the faith that got you there, I'm going to take that same faith and apply it to my getting up. Nothing begins to change until I first get up.
Okay, so quickly, you're going to talk to us about the second thing that he did. And this is all being pulled from the scripture.
Right.
In the 20th verse of 2 Samuel 19. Yeah, he said that the next thing that he did was he washed himself. So
Absolutely.
after he got up, he washed himself.
Absolutely. And this was not a typical performance of a king. The washing yourself is a ceremonial practice of the priest. David was one of only 3 people in the Bible that was allowed to be a king and a priest. I didn't tell y'all that. I forgot that part too. David, Melchizedek, and Jesus. David was a king and a priest. And so he didn't hop up and go run back to the throne. He picked up the mantle of priest first. This is important because the purpose of the priest is to be the intercessor. The purpose of the priest is to be the man in the middle. And so instead of going back to the throne to rule, David began, in his effort to recover, in his effort to heal, he began to force his attentions on others. He began to be an intercessor. He took that same faith that he used to pray to God about his son. He now takes that same faith to pray to God about others. Even though his prayer seemingly didn't work for his son, David did not give up on prayer. And so now he goes back to standing in the gap for others. There's something miraculous about that, something that kind of expedites your healing when it begins to not be about me. And that goes against your natural tendency that when you're hurt, everything begins to revolve around you. But to get things back in order, I got to begin to be a person who cares about others. I got to find somebody that I love enough, some people that I love enough that make me want to get up again. David began to think about the people. The people had nothing to do with Bathsheba. The people had nothing to do with the death of his child. The people still needed a king. And so David began to think about them. Who in your life do you love enough to get up? That's the next thing to get you beyond the loss.
You give us two more things, Pastor Jones, and I'm going to have you share one of them. You can pick whichever one that you like, but
We're running out of time.
hey, we're running out of time, but it's okay. They can tune back into our timeline and listen to today's
That's the whole
message.
thing.
Yeah. But you talked about the last two things that David did was he changed his clothes.
Mhm.
And then after he changed his clothes, he worshiped.
Absolutely.
I already know which one I think you're going to lean towards, but
Which one you want to lean to?
worship, man.
Yeah. After he got through all of that, and go back and listen, because you need to know what he did with what the anointing meant and the clothes meant.
Right.
But worship is, my place of worship is where I establish my worth.
Yeah.
Worthship. After you've gone through all of that, you got to remind yourself that I'm not dependent upon any exterior thing. I'm dependent upon God himself. Losses mean the loss of exterior things.
Wow.
The loss of people, the loss of stuff, the loss of status, whatever it may be. But you got to remember who's the one who can give you all of that. It was never you who was charged with the responsibility for making your name great.
Right.
It wasn't. And so now I got to turn my attention back to the one that can do all that for me. And so now that I'm fixated on God providing my worth, he now begins to offer me the healing that I need. And so he can restore me. As a matter of fact, I think it was David who said, even if I make my bed in hell, God can come and reestablish the king from hell. And so if God can do that for you, if God can reestablish the man who impregnated another guy's wife and then had him killed, all that stuff, and God still said, this is a man after my own heart, what's your excuse? God's really that kind of God that he can bring you back to a place of usefulness, even bring you back to a place of peace. But you got to know the process. So I encourage you to go and watch the sermon in its entirety. It is practical, and I do believe it will speak directly to your life. So if you ever find yourself in a place of loss, God gives you a practical way of walking yourself out. You can do these things while your heart is still hurting. You can do these things while you still feel depressed and anxious. And as you begin to walk out, you give your emotions time to catch up with your progress. Don't wait for your emotions to give you permission to be better. Go be better and allow your emotions to catch up later, and they will.
Thank you. We appreciate you, Pastor.
Thank you.
And on Wednesday night, I think you're going to chop this up and break this
Yeah,
down
we're
for us,
gonna
right?
put it in some bite-sized pieces and see what we can make out of it.
Okay.
Cut it up, make some sandwiches.
Yeah, I'm going to need that by Wednesday. Okay. Well, always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate that. We hope to see you out on Wednesday. If you're in the local area, 9 Beth Drive, Greenville, 29609, we're in the Cherrydale area. You want to close this out? What you laughing at, Pastor Jones?
You flew that out your mouth like you were selling used
We
cars.
are at 9 Beth Drive. Drag it, push it, pull it.
I got it from here. All right. Come on, visit us for some of this silliness. We have fun and we love Jesus. See you Wednesday night. If not Wednesday, we'll see you next Sunday. Until then, much love.